Trevor Seggebruch back on CNN. Before the break, we talked about Donald Trump's chances of re-election in the 2020 election. Now on to our weekly segment in which we look at past details of past U.S. Supreme Court cases. Last week I caught up with some of the participants and experts of Grease v. Galloway. Here with me is John Inazu, a First Amendment expert and professor of law at Washington University in St. Louis. Jonathan, could you tell the viewers a little bit about Grease v. Galloway?
Well, Trevor, the case was a Bill of Rights issue, which means the plaintiff was upset about how a right from the Bill of Rights is viewed. In Greece, the town board meeting started with a prayer.
And what was the plaintiff's name?
Susan Galloway. She was a Jew in the prominently Christian town.
So you say this was a Bill of Rights issue. What was exactly in question?
Galloway claimed the Establishment Clause in the Bill of Rights states that the government cannot establish a religion, and she felt the town board meeting was violating that clause.
Is there a case the Supreme Court would look back on from their previous ruling?
Yes. The case used to help decide the verdict in Grease v. Galloway was Marsh v. Chambers, in which Nebraska's legislative started with a prayer held by a state-paid chaplain.
How exactly did the case of Marsh v. Chambers affect Grease v. Galloway?
The court ruled that Grease did not violate the Establishment Clause because there was no proof of any sectarian or coercive content based off of these requirements to break the Establishment Clause from Marsh.
And what is considered coercive or sectarian?
That never at any point did the board or chaplain threaten or force Galloway into praying. And the court ruled that the prayers were allowed based off of the fact that we have a long, rich history of legislative prayer in our country.
And finally, could you tell our viewers about the path the case took to get to the Supreme Court?
Galloway sued the town of Grease in 2010 for violating the Establishment Clause. Then the district court ruled that there was no sectarian or coercive content in the prayers, which ultimately sided with the town of Grease. Galloway appealed, and in the Court of Appeals, the court unanimously agreed with Galloway that the prayers were filled with sectarian comments regarding Jesus and your son. Finally, the Supreme Court looked into the case and, in a 5-4 decision, sided with the town of Grease, just like the district court.
Well, Mr. Inazu, thank you for your time. I am now here with Mr. Thomas Ungar, who was the representative of the winning side of Grease v. Galloway. Mr. Ungar, could you tell us a little bit about what defending the town of Grease entailed?
Absolutely, Trevor. During the case, the main points were that the town of Grease was staying true to the roots of the nation. The nation always had legislative prayer, whether it be in legislation like Marsh v. Chambers, which the court heavily analyzed, or in a town board meeting like in Greece.
So would the board decide who would speak the prayer?
No, the board did not restrict who could speak. It was open to anyone who wished. The religious beliefs of the person were never of importance. The board could also not tell a speaker what could or could not have been said. This case, therefore, could not have been violated the Established Clause, because there was no endorsement of religion, only freedom of speech.
The case did end in a 5-4 decision favoring your side. How do you feel that the decision has helped the country since?
I feel allowing anyone to express their beliefs can only be a good thing for the country. Allowing people the rights bestowed upon us by the Founding Fathers is what made, and will continue to make America great.
All right, that is all. Thank you, Mr. Ungar.
My pleasure.
I am now here with the plaintiff of the past case, Susan Galloway, a citizen of Greece and a Jew in a town full of Christians. Susan, let me ask you if you could say what exactly your claims were in the case.
Yes, I sued my own hometown of Greece, New York, for saying prayers before town board meetings. The prayers made me upset that our town government was acting at the times of prayer like a missionary instead of a law-making group of citizens.
What in these prayers specifically offended you?
The fact that the readers were intentionally and persistently demonstrating favor of the Christian faith. I believed then, and still do, that this was completely out of context from the Establishment Clause, and the town of Greece had no right to do this.
Well, Ms. Galloway, even though you were ultimately unsuccessful in the case, how do you feel the country took the results?
I assume there are still stubborn Christians who think their religion is the only one that matters in this country. But after all, this country is a mix of all races, ethnicities, and religion. If anyone learned anything from this case, besides the fact that government and religion should not mix, I hope they learned that other people should have the same rights as Christians.
Well, thank you for your time today, Ms. Galloway.
Thank you, Trevor.
I'm back here with John and Azu from Washington University in St. Louis. John, I was wondering if you could talk about the outcome of this case and how judicial review was done either in the best interest of the country or not.
Well, Trevor, directly after this case, the debate over whether it was in the best interest of the country or not got rather heated. With a case that ended in a 5-4 decision, you could make the argument for either side. There are two sides of it, of if the case of Greece versus Galloway was done in the best interest of the country. On one hand, some believed the justices followed judicial review because in all of the documentation of the process, there was no reason to assume the justices treated anyone unfairly or follow the judiciary system. On the other hand, some may say that the fact this was a religious case, the justices were bound to have some bias. After all, there are 6 Catholics and 3 Jews on the bench. Whether or not you think it was or wasn't in the best interest of the country, the case certainly at the time showed the Supreme Court was still open to government and religion mixing together.
I see. Thank you for your time and insight, Mr. Anazu. Well, that's all the time we have for here at CNN on Greece v. Galloway. After the break, more on the nuclear crisis between China and Japan.